Hello and welcome to my guide for the spare change variation of Kollector. I want to start this video off by just saying that I don't really do guide videos. I'm not an expert at this game, and I'm definitely not some sort of amazing player by any means. However, I have been labbing and experimenting with this character an absolute ton, and I've just been enjoying him so much that I wanted to share everything that I've found out about him with other people that are hoping to play as him. I really wanted to cover everything there is to know about Kollector, so this is probably going to be a super lengthy video. Feel free to skip over the things you don't really care about by using the timestamps pinned in the comment section down below. Kollector is a character that relies heavily on mind games and fundamentals to get his game plan started. The spare change variation gives him access to Vial of Sorrow and Bag Bomb, which are two projectiles that work in tandem to pressure your opponents into making mistakes and providing you openings. In terms of execution, he's a fairly simple character. Instead, the difficulty with Kollector lies within utilizing your fundamentals flawlessly and taking full advantage of every opportunity that you can trick your opponent into giving you without becoming too predictable even with such a straightforward toolset. Before jumping into the next section, I just want to mention that my frame data may look different from what you'll see in the game. This is for a couple of reasons. One is because in my experience, some of the listed frame data in game is just not correct. And the other is because some of Kollector's strings don't actually even come out on block, so there's not really a point in listing it even though the game does. Additionally, the green hitboxes that you'll be seeing on the screen are just there to denote the absolute maximum range that a move or string can hit at, and they're rough estimates, not the actual hitboxes. All of that said, let's get a move on and start talking about Kollector's attacks. Kollector has about 68 different moves in total, which is probably a bit daunting at first glance. However, once you realize how many of those are just simply variations of the same move or continuations of a string, it significantly shortens that list. In this section, I'm going to run through each of his attacks and the different ways in which they can be utilized in a match. Let's start by going over his normals. Kollector's standing 1 has pretty good range, especially for its speed, which makes it a solid poke. It can also be used as an anti-air. It's cancelable, though it's not really hit confirmable on a single hit, and if you're using it as an anti-air, be careful with your cancels because some of them are kind of height specific. His 1-3 is a good string that can be used at a little closer than the mid-range. It's going to be your go-to block punish. It's a great advancing move. It's cancelable, which makes it one of your main combo starters, and it's an easy hit confirmable poke. The last part of the string, the 1-3-1, has some good range, it's got some great knockback, it advances you very far forward, and you can use this as a setup for a meaty bag bomb or for a Vial of Sorrow. It's not really something that you'll throw out too often in my opinion, but it's okay. Kollector's back one is a fairly decent range normal. It's cancelable but not really useful as a cancel. It's probably better that you use it as a poke. Just be careful on the range that you use it from since it is punishable, though if you're using it from max range it's probably not going to get punished. If you mess up, you can Hail Mary a special cancel and see what happens with this move, but I wouldn't count on it. The back 1-2 part of this string is an automatic hit confirm, which means that if you put this in, if it's blocked, it will just not come out. There's not really a point in stopping this at 2 hits, it's just kind of there. I don't really know what else you can do with this attack, so I wouldn't recommend stopping it here. Instead, move on into the back 1-2-2. This, again, automatically hit confirms itself, so it will not come out on block. So feel free to just put in back 1-2-2. If it hits, it will come out. If it's blocked, you're fine. This is a full screen knockback tool, which you can use if you want to make some space between you and your opponent. Kollector's forward 1 is a great low poke. It has good range, so it makes it good for whiff punishing, and it's safe on block. His forward 1-2 string has, again, great range. It's a low mid. It's going to be your main hit confirm because it's so easy to hit confirm. It's a good whiff punish. It's cancelable into a bread and butter combo. Just be careful about canceling into a bola off of a max range punish with this because it actually will not connect. I hope this gets fixed, but right now it won't connect, so just be careful. You can continue the forward 1-2 string into down 1, which is a mix-up option off of it that goes low. You will live by this and you will die by this. It is incredibly negative on block, and I wouldn't recommend throwing this out very often. The other half of this mix-up is the forward 1-2 down 2 option, which again, you will live by it, you will die by it. It is an overhead, but it is incredibly punishable on block, and again, I don't really recommend throwing it out that often. His down 1 can be used as an okay range poke, and it has this weird thing where it slightly pulls in your opponent on hit, but realistically the damage on it's not that fantastic and it doesn't really lead into anything, so use it sparingly. Kollector's 2 is a decent ranged move, and it also works as a great anti-air. This is probably going to be one of your main anti-airs just because of what you can get off of it, which you'll see in a second. The 2 into the 1+3 string is a combo that ends in a restand, so you can use this so your opponents can't use wake up options. It advances fairly far, and it's actually safe on block, so this is a pretty good move even to throw out just in neutral, not as a combo. His 2 into the 1+3 into the 4 is a string that leaves your opponent at a medium range, which gives you options to use either Vial of Sorrow again or a meaty bag bomb. It's probably the easiest collector specific crushing blow to land as well, and again this will probably be one of your main anti-airs because of that. Back 2 is a fast mid with some solid range on it. It also works as an anti-air, but it is kind of specific on the range, so be careful about using it. It is cancelable, but be careful when you cancel this into Bola when used as an anti-air because again, that is a very height specific thing. His back 2-3 string is a mid-low combo with some great range on it. It's one of the better options for a Vial of Sorrow cancel because it's completely safe, or you can set up for a meaty bag bomb again. His back 2-3-3 string it has huge range and gives an almost full screen knockback, which gives you plenty of potential for mix-ups on wake up. We'll get into some setups with that later, but just know that it is a very powerful string. It can also anti-air jumps, though I don't really recommend trying to use it for that because it's such a lengthy string, but if they happen to jump when you're in the middle of this string, you're probably going to be okay. Kollector's forward 2 is a good range mid poke that keeps Kollector standing in the exact same place. This can cancel into specials like a meaty bag bomb, though I don't really recommend using it for that. Instead, I would actually recommend just going ahead and using it for the forward 2 string, which is the bigger reason to use forward 2. It's a good range poke, it's an advancing mid, it's cancelable and serves as one of your main combo starters as a hit confirm, and it makes the forward 2 poke even safer. The forward 2-2 can also end in a 1+3, which is a side switching attack. It is not a grab, it may look like one, it may have an animation like one, but it is not a grab, and it is super punishable on block. You need to hit confirm this or you will die. Kollector's down 2 is a pretty solid uppercut. It's got reasonably good forward range on it, and it acts just like everybody else's down 2 in being a solid anti-air. It's also one of the easier crushing blows to land in a match for Kollector, and it gives you a nice opportunity to follow up into something bigger. It's pretty much safe on block despite the frame data, just due to the way that it pushes opponents back, similar to the other generic down 2s in the game. Flawless blocks or ducks are asking for trouble though, so don't throw this out without purpose and reason. His 3 is probably my least favorite move in the entire arsenal. It's a stubby high that has almost no forward reach, and while it's cancelable, it's not really hit confirmable. And it's just so risky to use, you're gonna get ducked, you're gonna get blocked. It's just probably a move you're gonna forget fairly quickly, honestly. This is a high into an overhead, so the idea is that your opponent is supposed to get caught duck blocking. The problem is that this is one of only 2 overheads that Kollector even has, aside from his jump and hop attacks. Both of his non-generic overheads come out of strings, and they're fairly recognizable, so I don't see this being all that great of a move. Still though, the overhead part on this string actually does have some pretty crazy range, and if you manage to land the crushing blow in a match, you get a nice follow-up opportunity. Back 3 has to be one of the most recognizable moves that Kollector has in my opinion. It's a move that retreats him backwards a good distance while he also flails his mace in front of him, which keeps opponents from following you. Getting both hits on this move is fairly spacing specific though. It can serve as an anti-air and a general poke, and it's even cancelable on the first hit. It's safe on block to boot, so this has to be one of my favorite normals that he has. Forward 3 is another one of Kollector's better moves in my opinion. This attack is an amazing advancing move that hits from nearly full screen distance. It's cancelable, which is great if you're using it as a whiff punish, and it's also safe on block. I'm not going to talk about stopping this string early just because there's not really a point, so we're just going to talk about the forward 3, 1, 2, 3. This is another move that hit confirms itself, so you can just dial it in with your forward 3 if you're not sure whether it's going to land or not, and you'll find out. On hit, it has solid pushback, which can be helpful to keep your distances, and it can also give you a bag bomb setup or a Vial of Sorrow setup on knockdown. Down 3 for Kollector is a quick low poke with some great range, and it's safe on block. The damage is fairly low of course, but it's a good way to check your opponents trying to walk into a space that you don't want them in. Kollector's 4 is a high attack that has great range, and you'll probably be using this a lot as a poke. It's not technically safe on block, but if you're using it at a proper spacing, it will be safe from attacks that reach that far generally. It's cancelable, though it's not really all that useful as a cancel, but it's there. This can be used as an excellent whiff punish tool as well. His 4/4 string is an amazing high-mid poke with fantastic range. Getting it blocked at close range is probably asking for death, but since it's cancelable, you can even do mix-ups out of it if your opponent is trying to punish you. This also gives you a meaty bag bomb at mid-screen on hit. While it's relatively safe on block at range, just don't get too predictable with this because on flawless block, it's incredibly negative. The final part of this is the 4/4-3 string, and this follow-up attack is another automatic hit confirm. This gives an incredible setup for Vilasara if you cancel into it too, or if you want an easy hit confirm into a Shoto Fury, this is great for that too. Back 4 is Kollector's version of a sweep. It's kind of slow on startup and it has a fairly whatever range. It still gives a knockdown and it does give you a Vilasara or Bag Bomb setup, and the animation does keep him standing so it's a little bit deceptive looking, but with the lack of non-generic overheads, it's just not as scary. It is safe on block though, and it can give mix-up opportunities on wake up with Bola and Demonic Mace cancels. Still though, the move is kind of just lackluster overall. Forward 4 is a low attack that hits twice, and your opponent can even walk into the secondary hit of this. It's got good range, a deceptive standing animation, and it's cancelable, so you can use it as a way to start or end combos. This also gives you a good Vilasara setup. It doesn't work with Bag Bomb since it actually combos though. It's not safe on block, but from the proper distance, it will be hard to punish. Down 4 is a low attack that has a good range again, and it's safe on block, so it's easy to use this as a poke. It's cancelable, but it doesn't actually combo into anything, so I wouldn't recommend trying that. Maybe occasionally a Vilasara, or use it for a meaty Bag Bomb afterwards, or maybe some mind games with Bola and Mace cancels, but don't get too predictable. Kollector's Jump 1 has some decent downward range, and it gives enough hit stun to actually land combos after. It's a good air-to-air attack that puts your opponent into a juggle state as well, which lets you keep a combo going after it. Kollector's Jump 2, on the other hand, is a bit more awkward. It's got more of an upward trajectory on its hitbox, so it functions as more of a way to catch opponents that have already jumped. However, when used as a way to combo out of an amped Bola, this attack nets you 20 more base damage over a Jump 1, and that's where its main use is. It does still function as an air-to-air with a pretty wide hitbox though, and it's even cancelable for a nice Vilasara setup. Bag Bomb will hit the ground before your opponent even gets up, so I would not try that. Kollector's Jump 3 is a fairly generic one for the most part. It's got a decent downward angle, and it launches the opponent backward on hit, unless you do a deep cross-up with it. You can combo after the launch of this, which is one of the main ways that you will end your combos, and you can special cancel into another Vilasara setup as well. Kollector's Punch Hop attack is pretty decent. It's got good forward range on it, so you can use it much further away from the opponent than they might expect, and that spacing will also make it much harder to punish. His Kick Hop attack isn't very good on the range, but it does come out 3 frames quicker than the Punch Hop attack, which makes it a lot harder to see and react to. It's unsafe on block of course, and there isn't the safety of the distance to help with it either, so you'll definitely want to use this attack when you have a good read on your opponent. Kollector's Get Up 3 has some good horizontal range on it, and it's also fully invincible. The drawback is that this is also unsafe on block, leaving you open to potentially nasty punishes. And that's only more true if this gets flawless blocked. Use it smartly, use it sparingly. Do not use this as an option against jump-ins, it has no vertical hitbox. At best, you'll simply dodge the jump-in attack due to the invincibility, and then you're wide open for a punish. His Get Up 2, sadly, is not all that great. There's no invincibility tied to this move, and what's worse is how awkwardly bad the vertical hitbox is. The animation might lead you to believe otherwise, but the vertical hitbox is pretty much non-existent and will lose out to jump-ins all the time. I do not recommend trying to use this as an anti-air on Get Up. Either just block the jump-in attack, or if you have enough time, use one of his go-to anti-airs. It does have some nice horizontal range on it, but I just don't think this move is that great really. Kollector's Forward Throw is a fairly standard one. It leaves the opponent at a far distance, which does give the opportunity for Bag Bomb or Vilasara or Bola and Mace shenanigans. It's also potentially a crushing blow just like all the other throws in the game, so there's always something to keep in mind. His back throw isn't too much different. Again, this leaves them at a good distance away from you, which opens them up to your wake up mix-ups and mind games. It's also another potential crushing blow you can land. Let's move on to the specials that Kollector has in this variation. First up is Vial of Sorrow. This is the main reason that I even wanted to play this variation to begin with. It places a flame carpet on the ground that does unblockable damage while your opponent stands in it. The initial toss of this move does not count as a projectile either, so your opponent can't simply eat it with moves that typically do. While it's only 20 damage a tick, the ticks come fast, and they place a passive pressure on your opponent that can have them making mistakes that put them right back into an unfavorable situation for them. This move also has options to make it land closer or further away from you as well, so if you're expecting forward rolls or backward rolls, you can even use this as a setup for those situations. It can also be used while airborne, and you can cancel into it out of your jump attacks even if they whiff. Once again, there are close and far variations in the air as well, and your height will determine exactly where the vial will land. You can get the air version out of short hops too, though the execution's a little more strict. Bag Bomb is the other move that's specific to this variation. This is a projectile that has an arcing trajectory, making it suitable as a tool that can be used for zoning, while also making it hard to just jump over. This move also has the option to throw it out further, but sadly there's no option for a close version. Still though, the damage on this projectile is good enough to make your opponent not want to simply eat it, and they can't just simply duck or jump over them like most other projectiles in the game. Much like Vial of Sorrow, Bag Bomb also has an air version that will give you more options and control over where you're wanting those vials to land. Again, you can use these as short hops, the execution is a little more strict. While Bag Bomb is just fine on its own, it's actually the combination of this with Vial of Sorrow that makes it truly scary. If you land one of these inside of the fire carpet, it produces an explosion that launches your opponent with an initial 100 damage starter, and then it leaves them open to a huge combo after. While the horizontal range on the explosion is kind of awkwardly small, the vertical hitbox is much more suitable. This means that if your opponent is simply trying to neutral jump out of it, you have an opportunity for damage. While this doesn't work if they immediately jump, even a short delay on their part will give you enough time. But we'll get into those setups at the end of this guide. Demonic Mace is a long-range mid that's almost solely relegated to being a tool just for mind games. Due to the ability to charge this move up and or cancel out of this move, you can mix your opponent up with just this move alone. It's also a crushing blow if you manage to land this attack after fully charging it, but I honestly would not count on that happening very often. The startup on this move is longer than Damned Bola, but the pushback and the block frames are much better, so I guess that's the trade-off that you're looking at with this. Shotel Fury is a move that is probably the combo ender you're going to be using the most. You definitely don't want to just be throwing this thing out on its own, as it's pretty punishable on block, so be sure that you're hit confirming into this. The amplified version is okay, but I wouldn't really recommend using it unless it's to end and secure a round. The meter is too important to spend on grabbing less than 50 extra damage off of this, especially since it doesn't give you any more hit advantage for additional wake-up mix-ups. Damned Bola has to be what I would say is Kollector's signature move. It's a high-hitting projectile that, similarly to Demonic Mace, has a built-in mix-up since you can hold it and cancel out of it. The amplified version of this attack is going to be your main way of extending combos and squeezing out the maximum damage possible, so this attack is integral to your gameplay. In a projectile war, Damned Bola will basically beat anything that isn't Sub-Zero's Ice Ball, because you can trade and steal combo after, even from extremely far ranges. Relic Absorb is an ability that absorbs a single projectile. This move is honestly really disappointing, and for so many reasons. It's got slow startup and huge recovery for starters, but beyond that, it just has no utility past absorbing a projectile. Unlike a move like Katana's Royal Protection, which then gives her a damage buff after, Relic Absorb just eats a projectile and that's it. It also only eats a single projectile, which in fairness is like most other moves that absorb projectiles, but it just feels like maybe it should eat multiple for how long you stick it out for. If you amplify this ability after absorbing a projectile, you will get a slow moving projectile of your own on the screen. You can walk behind this as a way to deter your opponent from pushing buttons, or you can use it to eat another projectile, but honestly I don't think either of these ideas are all that great, and the meter is just too useful on Damned Bola to use on this other than some niche situations. Kollector's Fatal Blow's initial hit has some medium distance on it. It's not exactly stubby, but I'd say that it feels like its range is fair. It does have a nice hitbox vertically though, which means you can definitely use it raw on reaction to a neutral jump or a jump in. Just be careful because if you hit it at the apex of a neutral jump, it will whiff. And that's all of Kollector's attacks. So we're going to be moving right into Kollector's tools. If you're tired of listening to my voice, you're in luck because I'm just about done talking. Before this part of the video though, I just want to mention that if you're wondering why I think these moves are good options for what I've listed them as, you can just hear what I said about the moves in the attacks section. So, without further ado, please enjoy the rest of this video.